So y'all was typing this in the chat yesterday, and I asked y'all to send it to me. So you sent it to me. And I was very much surprised. I didn't even know that this was possible. I didn't know that Chicago did not own their own streets. Now, who is this white man? Who is this white man? That is sitting at the bottom of my page. His name is Richard M. Daley. Richard Daley was the 54th mayor of Chicago from 1989 to 2011. Richard Daley was the mayor of Chicago, reigned supreme for what, 22 years? For 22 years, Richard Daley ran Chicago for 22 years. And the reason why Richard Daley is at the bottom of my page and I don't have Brandon Johnson, because I can't set this at Brandon Johnson's feet. See, I'm a nice guy. I'm objective. I cannot set this problem at Brandon Johnson's feet, even though Brandon Johnson inherited and is continuing to torpedo Chicago down into the drain by embracing his migrant crisis and standing tall on it and not listening to the people that then voted him into office. Richard Daley ran Chicago for 22 years. Under his administration, Chicago streets were allegedly sold. That's crazy.
The summers are hotter than the surface of the sun, and the winters are so cold they're a violation of the Geneva Convention. But for 1 or 2 days in the fall, it's actually pretty tolerable. The thing is, if I was to step here, I'm no longer in Chicago. I've officially entered the domain of Morgan Stanley and the Emir of Abu Dhabi. That's right, in 2008, Chicago sold its streets to Morgan Stanley and a handful of investors for $1.157 billion.
Now remember, Chicago, along with the rest of the country in 2008, was under duress in that it was a recession. And Morgan Stanley was one of the firms that were affected by what was going on in the recession. But both outside investors outside of the country and Morgan Stanley themselves capitalized off of the duress of the entire city of Chicago and sold their streets, literally their streets, for less than $1.2 billion to outside investors. Chicago don't even own their own. They can't even control what's happening in their own streets. Just $1 billion. Dog, it costs more for the infrastructure to be able to build Chicago streets than what it is that they sold it out for. And again, remember, this happened under the administration of Richard Daley. I'm going to be reading that super chat shortly. Thank you, my friend. Richard Daley, retired in 2011, but not before he sold the streets of Chicago over to outside investors and foreign investors. Ain't that crazy? That is insane to me.
More specifically, they sold a 75-year lease on the city's 36,000 parking meters and their respective parking spaces. And until the year 2084, the people of Chicago will pay a private company anytime they want to park at a meter. That's right, 2084, which means the Bears might win the Super Bowl before Chicago is allowed to decide what it does with its own parking meters. It's okay, I can say that. I was born here. And aside from Chicago undercharging Morgan Stanley and friends by billions of dollars, Chicago gave up something even more important: control of their streets. Anytime Chicago wants to have a parade or do road work or take a meter offline for any reason, the citizens of Chicago have to pay Morgan Stanley back for their supposedly lost revenue. In 2012 alone, the bill was $31.5 million.
Did y'all know this? Wait. Did y'all know this? Listen. We playing the wrong game out here in these streets, y'all. I'm just now finding this out for the first time in my life. The more, y'all keep being mad at me for deep diving into the infrastructure and the landscape of what's going on behind the scenes and uncovering all of the corruption that is happening in Chicago. Y'all should be thanking me because the majority of the people did not. Listen, nobody knew this until this guy started doing it. All of the stuff that we see happening, Chicago over budget, y'all aldermen, I didn't even know what an alderman was. Y'all got 50 of them. It's considered one of the most corrupt cities in the United States of America. Y'all have a lease. Y'all have given up a 75-year-old lease to the city of Chicago until 84. 2084. Listen, some of y'all not even going to be here in 2084. Yo, kids going to be paying for this. It's crazy, bro. When they have to take a parking meter or they have to have a parade offline, y'all got to pay them, and they only paid you a little over one. Listen, think about this. Look at this return on investment. Shout out to Mr. Lot. I'm going to be reading that super chat shortly. $1.2 billion over to Morgan Stanley, right? And outside investors, including over there in Dubai. That's why they building all of these skyscrapers over there in Dubai, because they making money off of y'all over in Chicago. Your property taxes are so high because you got to pay Morgan Stanley every single time that a parking meter go offline. So when y'all have a parade, so next time y'all have a good time, y'all have a parade or anything like that, in 2011 and 12, listen, they've already owned the city. I guarantee you that they probably already got the return on their investment back, because not only are they making money from the meters, but they also making money from you paying them. If you decide that you want to do a parade or something, the taxpayers and the citizens have to pay for that. In 2011 and 12, this is saying in the third year. Now remember, they got a 75 ownership lease on these things. In the third year alone, 2011 and 12, when we didn't even fully come out of the recession yet, they made over $31.5 million and what the city had to pay them back in the services that they then had to render, because they didn't make, you know what I'm saying, they didn't have the opportunity to be able to make money off of y'all some of them days. 31 M's. And you know the interesting thing about parking meters? Don't nobody even got to do nothing with them. They just sit there and collect money, especially since they made them digital. And the only people that they ain't got to worry about, that got to come in and service some things, is whatever maintenance techs got to deal with them, or whatever meter maid's got to come in and give you a ticket to make even more money as a result of the parking meters. That is wild, bro. That is just something that I would have never thought of in my entire life. I would have never thought of the idea that you can buy a street from somebody, that you can buy a street from the city. That taxpayers then use money in order to build, maintain, but you can buy a whole street. They can take your banking institutions and outside investors can buy a whole street. That's crazy. That's free money. That is free. You built it. Now you under duress and you're going to give it to me for pennies on the dollar of what it took for you to build it. And I can make money off of you. And I can continue to charge you if you decide to have a parade or shut the street down, have the Macy's Day Parade. Wow. Talk about bad business. Politicians are the worst. They are the worst. And y'all continue to vote these people in thinking that they got y'all best interest at heart, not knowing that they selling y'all very streets from under y'all. That is insane, bro. Let me see some more of this.
Which, by the way, was more than Chicago was making from all 36,000 meters combined before they sold them to Morgan Stanley. And in a time when using our resources efficiently is so important and making our cities more human-centric is so popular, The people of Chicago have found themselves locked into a parking meter deal that will prioritize expensive, polluting, car-centric infrastructure for 3 generations. And to help me get a sense of exactly how badly the people of Chicago got boned in this deal, I'm going straight to the top with Matt Parker from the YouTube channel Stand Up Maths.
I'm very pleased to be here.
Thank you for being here.
I've now embraced the Chicago life.
It looks great on you.
Thank you.
Now, Matt's one of the best science and math communicators I've ever met, so he's gonna help take us through the math part a little bit. We don't actually need you for like probably 5 minutes. I gotta do some context and then smash to an intro and that kind of thing. But you can read this line here.
This is a bad situation, but maybe there's something we can do about it.
Perfect. Hi, I'm Raleigh Williams.
All right, let me see if I can fast forward a little bit and see if I can find a little bit more of this, because this is crazy. This is a long video. This guy's name is, let me give him a little bit of credit. Climate Town is the name of the channel. If you want to go over and look at this and do a deeper dive into what is going on in Chicago, let me see if I can fast forward.
Sold its streets to Morgan Stanley. Welcome to Climate Town. On Chicago with the Instead, he opted for a novel solution. They'd sell off the city's 36,000 parking meters to the highest bidder. What was he thinking? And while we know it was a trash can of an idea in hindsight, at the time, it wasn't quite so obvious. See, Chicago had previously privatized things like janitorial services, tax collection, and parking garages in deals known as public-private partnerships. And the results had been vaguely positive. See, cities have limited resources and manpower, and sometimes outsourcing a job like street resurfacing to a private company that already has a steamroller and a truck full of yellow paint makes a lot more sense than the city of Chicago buying a bunch of new equipment and doing it themselves. So Chicago put their meters up for sale in the form of a 75-year lease. Morgan Stanley crunched some numbers and decided to offer the city $1,156,500,000. Now, $1 billion is very cool. And since the majority of Chicago's meters were still charging 25 to 50 cents an hour, they weren't exactly a money-making enterprise for the city. At the time of the deal, the entire fleet of 36,000 parking meters was making just $20 million a year for Chicago. Now, you mathletes out there might be saying, hey, isn't 20 million times 75 years $1.5 billion? Now, that is technically true, you dorks. But getting $1 billion up front would allow Chicago to fix their budget, Mayor Daley could score some political points by keeping property taxes low, and they could invest the rest in the market so they could save some of that cash for a rainy day. Talk about opening the door to a bright future. Oh! Morgan Stanley was willing to part with $1 billion up front by getting some co-signers on board, including the Emir of Abu Dhabi, and they planned to make their money back by just jacking up the meter prices. Plus 1 or 2 tiny little details in the contract that I'm sure won't come up in this episode about how Chicago got totally screwed by Morgan Stanley. Anyway, Morgan Stanley, the city of Chicago, and the consulting firm William Blair hammered out the rest of the terms and then gave the city council 2 days to read through and approve the 150-page contract. When some city council members protested, they were reminded that they had already passed the city's 2009 budget that already included $150 million from the meter deal, and that any third-party audit of the deal or any other delay could put the city at risk.
America is for sale, bro. America is for sale. Anybody in their right mind understands that if you're making $20 million a year and you're only collecting quarters and you're able to remove the labor associated with then collecting quarters, but instead you can digitize or make sure that you make it a much more efficient process for people to pay. In addition to that, jacking up the prices easily and not having any control over what's going on as far as the infrastructure and charging the city if any of your stuff go down, anybody in their right mind know that you can triple and double and triple that profit without even thinking about it. a 75-year-old lease. Let me tell y'all something. If anybody first gives you a contract and it's that long, or they're giving you something that seems too good to be true, start doing the numbers. I know that y'all always in y'all head said that, man, this math is not going to matter to me when I go to school or whatever, so on and so forth. But let me tell you something. There was no more important subject than math. Everybody keeps saying they bad at math. No, you wasn't bad at math. You just didn't apply yourself because it didn't mean anything to you. The city got finessed and fleeced, and they had layers of government that was supposed to catch it and object to it, which is one of the reasons why you have mayors, city councilmen, aldermen, voters. All of these layers are supposed to catch it and not do something that's in your worst interest, but instead make an opposing argument in order to convince you to do something that's in your best interest. If they willing to give you $1.2 billion, especially when you adjust for inflation over the next 75 years, ask yourself the question, what are they going to make from it? You know what the things I'm starting to get in my email right now? You know what I'm starting to get in my email? I'll bring it down from a C student's perspective. I'm starting to get a lot of offers, a lot of phone calls, and a lot of petitions from companies that is looking to give me an upfront payment for my content creation platforms to monetize it over the next 2 to 3 years and to give me an advance. It's a fact. And the numbers is big, and it's 7 figures. And I'm like, most people, like rappers and all of these other people, they would take the deal because they looked at my numbers and they crunched my numbers without actually even seeing my numbers. And I realized that one of these companies actually subscribed to the Patreon in order to see how much money that I'm busting down on some of these platforms and stuff like that. And they offered a huge deal, right? And so I laughed and I went back to the drawing board and I started doing the numbers. And I compared what it was that I was making a year before and a year before and a year before that on content creation. And then I looked at the numbers as far as what the growth rate has been. Basically, the percentage of growth that I've been experiencing year over year, month over month, compared to the year last year, in order to calculate what the possibility that I would be making in the next 3 to 4 years if I keep up the exact same pace, right? So on top of that, the growth is crazy. That's number one. Number two, I don't need no upfront money. And the only reason that they're able to offer this deal to me is because it's other YouTubers, and this is one of the pitches that they gave me, it's other YouTubers that took the deal. There are YouTubers that took the deal. They don't even own their own content. And they are required to work every single moment and stream a minimum amount of time and all of this other type of stuff and perform. And they got that advance money and they still had to pay taxes from it. And now they became slaves to their own content. How is it any different with this? Any deal that you make, it's going to be the same way. All you got to do, A, is go and do the numbers and do the math. Number two, you got to understand the difference between ownership and leasing. And then number three, you got to have a vision for where it is that you're going to go so that you don't get finessed. And so I'm not saying that the deals are all bad or that these YouTubers don't need the money, but all I'm saying is there are content creators that is now signing 360 deals like the city of Chicago did with Morgan Stanley and outside resources. Crazy. Crazy. Insane. I couldn't believe it when they told me that. I said, who they named some huge YouTubers that have sold their platforms. Man, y'all don't believe me? Let me tell you something. I'm gonna have to do a deep dive because y'all have now incentivized me or has given me some ideas as to how it is that I need to be able to break this down. But I'm telling you, as YouTubers that are selling their content, they have been doing it for decades. Over a decade, there have been YouTubers that have done these content creator deals and they have sold their platforms and they don't even own their own stuff. It's crazy. It's crazy. But they ran up on the wrong one because I don't need your money. You can't incentivize me with a carrot in front of my face